All right.
This thing.
Do-do-do.
I got Eye of the Tiger this time.
Oh, right on. What's up, YouTube?
Hey, what's happening? Facebook, too.
All right, sweet.
Okay.
All right, today, 3 things you're going to see. We're going to talk flow quite a bit. Flow with the 360. Got some stuff to share and show you.
Yeah, blowing a lot of bubbles. It was really fun.
Yep.
Magnet cleaners, little bonus.
Mm-hmm. The tank got dirty, so we had to clean it.
Oh, yeah, it was nasty. And
All
then
right.
This guy.
And this guy, yeah. So we're going to share with you guys how we're going to use this to test power heads and flow in the future. We don't have it nailed down 100%, but there's like this and a couple other tests that we're going to do. We're going to share that with you guys today. So come along with the journey, and we'll see. So the very first thing, for those who don't know, there was no lights in this tank or anything. There's actually, it's in a basement. There's just a little bit of sunlight that spills in the evening.
Every once in a while when you don't have your windows shades down.
Yep,
yeah,
it's true.
But it got nasty.
Still was growing algae in there, green film on the glass. I was going to bring home a nitrate and phosphate test kit last night, but I forgot. So maybe I'll share that information with you next week.
But we were prepping for this flow conversation last week, but just couldn't get it done because the glass was dirty and the lighting and all this other stuff. So just weren't prepared for it. So we talked about black box instead. But
there's a lot of stuff going on this week, like through the week, man. Like catches me up. Yesterday, Dave's like, "So you ready for tomorrow's live?"
I said, tomorrow.
Man. Is it tomorrow? I don't know. All right. So yeah. All right. So the first thing is the magnet cleaner. So I just want to clean the glass before you show you all these cool little bubble the flow, because you're going to see the exact flow pattern visually with the bubbles of what happened in the 360 using all 4 of those pumps in the back.
Really
so you
cool.
get to see that. But first things first. All right, I brought home 2 magnet cleaners. And I'm going to tell you right now, that's a great white from Algae Free. And you'll notice I'm using 2 hands.
It's like, this is rated for like up to an inch. They say up to an inch glass, but I actually think it could probably go a little thicker than that just because it's so strong.
Dude, like, you don't really need 2 hands, man, but it's powerful. Like, you could definitely benefit from the other hand. Right? It holds on really, really tight, too tight. And also, like, one of the things you'll notice there too is the blade is actually fairly small. It's only like probably 1.5 inches or so, the blade.
Yeah, so when you have a 4-foot pane by like 20-some inches, that's going to take you forever.
So I got like a 5.5 foot, 2 of them, and another 4-foot pane.
Yeah.
It'll take forever. So the flipper up there, let's see the flipper. All right, so this is a flipper. There's a problem.
There goes the flipper.
Yeah, so it says it's up to 1 inch, but
I mean, it'll
I don't
hold
know.
on that inch glass, and you could probably get the light film algae on there. But what happens when you run into like a piece of?
If you're real gentle with it, it'll stay.
Yeah.
Right, but if you ran into like a chunk of coralline algae, nope.
It'll probably pop off.
All right, so this is going to be the most ridiculously expensive option, but we do it here because we have like lots of returns and different things.
And it's actually one that won like we did the best of 2019 glass cleaners, and this was my option.
Yeah, so like it's funny, like Terrence over at Neptune's like a super adamant guy about the like the flipper because it's bigger and it has little nubs on it, so no sand gets in it. But for me, man, it just like doesn't stick to the glass. I just like don't want to use it, right?
Yeah.
And I would get it for a thicker than it's rated for because I don't want to be super gentle with it.
Yeah, that Flipper Max we used on the 160 here. That's 3/4 inch glass.
3/4 inch,
and it
glass.
Works great.
It does. It does work really great there. So 1 inch glass, man. I don't know. It's a little stretching stretching it for me. We're missing one of the videos in there, man. Oh no.
There was the hybrid solution.
The hybrid solution. Is that it? I don't think it is, man. Oh man. Well, you're gonna have to look at my Facebook later on to see this, I guess. Is it?
Sorry, guys.
I know we're trying to look here. I think it's that one right above your hand. Maybe.
Straight
no,
up.
that's not
it's
it.
down the center.
Oh man, somehow we lost it. I can't believe that.
All
right, so here's the deal. The hybrid solution is you're gonna have to look at my Facebook later because it's such a huge difference. You put the great white on the outside, you put the flipper on the inside,
Done.
And like you cannot get rid of it, but it slides around super easy because it only has those 2 little nubbins on the back that are touching the glass. Big old razor on the front. And you're sliding around, works out super great.
That heavy magnet of the great white, and they use a felt, like a felt bottom for it too, which I don't know if if the other end of the dry side of the flipper has the same kind of felt, but it just every time I use those algae-free ones, they seem to slide on the outside a heck of a lot smoother than some like just flipper. And just a few.
Dave's in trouble. He lost our
the footage is awesome. You see that, and you're going like this and shaking it and moving it. It doesn't, the other end of the, it doesn't.
For all of you on Facebook, you'll see it later. All right, so here's the thing. Past that, so the flipper, by the way, it also kind of floats, kind of doesn't. I think they're going to change that maybe in the future.
So you're going with a hybrid solution, and it's expensive to do that.
So where you came for today is flow. So here's the first shot of the tank. So you can still see the pumps and stuff because the hood is not done, but that's going to come down the side. You can still see the plumbing and everything. But look at the pumps are there. There's 4 power heads in the back. You can barely see them there. There's no cords coming at the other end of the tank, and it looks pretty sharp.
Just enough room to install the dry sides on the back here. So if you look at that one in the top left corner, that one is right in between the return line and the overflow box, and as high as we can get it without kind of making that vortex. She could go a little bit higher, but still left to right, that's about as far as you could go.
Yeah, and you'll notice we had the bottom ones on the very, very bottom here to shoot all the way across and keep the bottom clean and flush it clean. So, but the next shot, so you can't even really see them on there. You can start to see now like how well they're hidden into the back because it's black on black. And I don't have any of those cords or anything. It's just going to look sharp.
Well, could you imagine having a pump like right here on your left pane?
Yeah, at the end of the peninsula.
Yeah, or right here in the middle at the top or something like that.
I got some solutions that I would use. I'll tell you guys about later maybe. But like I wouldn't want to put magnet attached pumps on there and cords. I just really, unless I just had no other choice, right? But all right, so this is the long shot that you just like wouldn't really want to obstruct. You have this big beautiful pane, and you can't even see the pumps down there. But does putting 4 pumps on the back actually work?
So that's the problem we're trying to solve here. Is like we want to see if it is possible to get the flow that we're looking for, that turbulent changing flow, without pumps anywhere else but one side.
Yeah, so I want to just remind, so I know some of you have already heard this, but I want to remind you what the goal is here, like what we're hoping you can achieve, and you're going to see whether or not we did. Is if we got 4 pumps, one on the top and one on the bottom on both sides, if I turn off 2 of them and I turn 2 of them on, will it shoot water all the way down 5.5 feet? And then, cross the 4 feet on the other side of the tank, and then come back the other way, and then just create like a gyre.
Yeah, the top to bottom.
Circular gyre in the tank, just a current going all around. It should, but it's a long ways. It's going across 4 feet, and it's going to have to travel all the way back. Will it do that? Then, if I turn those 2 off and I turn the other one on, will it go around the other direction? Right? And then, what if I turn on like this one 80% and this one 20? Will it create a point of turbulence that it materializes in the tank? And then if I shift it to like 60-40, will the point of turbulence shift within the tank? And so the point of turbulence shifts around the tank. And then, because it's 4 foot wide on the edge, if I turn both of them on, will the water come all the way along the sides and then return and flush out down the center of it?
Yeah. It's a lot of ask right there.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, you're trying to do a lot of different things with pumps in the back, just trying to keep cords and all that stuff out of the tank. Specifically cords all the way in the bottom.
Well, because we know we can achieve those types of goals with pumps on the left and right of the tank. When you have a standard tank like the 160, you got 2 pumps opposing each other, and maybe some additional pumps here in the back and whatever for a strategic placement. You can achieve that. We did that with the gyres here on this one, with using their like alternating gyre mode, where it naturally just raises one and the other one like this. We could actually see with the bubbles where they would hit. But it's easy with a rectangle type of thing when you got pumps on both ends.
So just so you know, if I was going to put pumps on that opposite end, I would probably do one of 2 things. One, I would probably use like the max spec gyre, just because you can put that thing up so high that it really doesn't become as big of an eyesore in the tank. So I'd probably put 2 gyres up there, and then I got a hood so I can route the cords up into the hood, And because it's so close, you probably won't see a whole lot. Little bar magnets out of the view for the most part, right? All right. If I didn't do that, I'd actually do what we saw over at Sean's house.
Oh, yeah, some of Sean's returns were plumbed up and over and then straight down into the center of the tank or in other places of the tank.
So you could create a closed loop through the bottom, you can create a kind of a closed loop through the top, but what he also had was the little sea swirl guy attached to tunes, right?
Old technology, because I remember when I was getting them off of Craigslist and stuff, or they were available, they were for sale, because nobody was really using them anymore.
Yeah.
But they work.
Yeah, so what that does is allows a little pipe to drop down. You attach your tunes to it, and you can like aim it to wherever you want to go, and it'll like spin it around in different patterns, rotates back and forth. But now I have no magnets on the outside of the glass, and the cord goes up, and it's kind of suspended off the glass, so it doesn't have as big of like an obstruction. The further you get from the glass, the kind of smaller in relation to you and what it covers up it is. So I probably would have done that. So, and I'm not going to say that I won't do that in the future, because I really won't know 100%. But now you guys can follow the journey along here and see whether or not any of this materialized. I'm going to start with the 2 pumps that are closest to you. We're going to call it left here. Right.
So if you're looking down the end of the peninsula, it's my left side.
And those are going to be on 100%. The other 2 furthest from you are going to be on 0. Let's see what happens. All right. So we're using air bubbles here to be able to tell you what happens with the pump.
It works really well too.
All right. Well, it should turn on here.
There it goes. All right.
All right. So you can see now the bubbles are absolutely traveling around.
They hit the wall.
The gyre that you'd like.
They went that's 4 feet front to back that you see them, and now they're coming back to back crossways another 5 feet.
Yeah,
and here they are hitting the pumps again.
Yeah, and so you can see those little bubbles traveling around the whole thing.
That actually happened pretty quick.
Yeah, so you definitely can see, hopefully it'll start again. You can see that the velocity here is a little faster than it is when it's returning on the other side. But it's absolutely creating that gyre and current in the tank that we're looking to create. All right, so let's turn them down a little bit and find the 80-20. So we're now going to do 80% here and 20% on the other side. And what you're going to see is the velocity slows down, obviously because the pump did, but also the intersection.
Yeah, see, when this one starts again, you'll see how the bubbles seem a little slower coming across that front pane. But actually, when they hit that second bulge of rocks, they really kind of hit a wall almost.
Actually, I'd see it the biggest, like almost like a couple of seconds ago. When it crosses that going to the back, all of a sudden it stalls out. And hopefully we'll be able to see it go again here.
It goes.
Yeah, so we're going to see it create that wall of bubbles. It's going to go all the way across the end. But instead of like creating that like returns, it crosses across and then starts to stall out because there's flow competing with it, and now there is a point of turbulence. And so one of the things here that I want you guys to look for is when you see the clear bubbles, you might be thinking, or the clear area where there's no bubbles, like, oh, well, there's no flow there. It's actually the opposite. It's that is where there's enough force pushing back the bubbles that the bubbles and the flow can't penetrate into it. And so that's actually where the point of turbulence is. So I might play with this a little bit better, and you maybe, again, on Facebook, you'll see like, we're gonna try 2 hoses and see if you can see where the turbulence hits. I'm gonna explore this a little deeper, but I think you can see absolutely that. So let's go to 60-40 here. So now 40 in the back, 60 in the front, and you can absolutely see the point of turbulence. And again, it would look like there's no flow on the right if you didn't know what you're looking for, but actually you can see the edges of turbulence where it's pushing back against those bubbles so they can't go the other direction. But you can see how all those little bubbles actually now cross the tank in the center because it's got that haze. And so a totally different look. We created a different point of turbulence in here. It's shifting throughout the tank. All right. And you can see like it's crossing the top, and those patterns actually change. It doesn't just create a stagnant flow pattern. There's just different, like equilibriums that happen, and it shifts all over the place.
So you mean if I left them at 60-40 for an hour, which is an exuberant amount of time. I still see changes in how those two flows interact.
Yeah, sometimes I did this a bunch of times, and sometimes you would see the bubbles like go over the top. Sometimes you'd see current pushing back and it'd go under the bottom because it's a really dynamic environment. Like so much is pushing on each other in so many different ways, and like it just keeps changing. It doesn't find like a perfect equilibrium. Like if there's only two pumps on it, it'll just go around. Or if there's only two pumps aimed at each other, eventually it kind of like creates a stagnant turbulence. But in this case, because we're shooting in different directions, it actually seems to shift all over the place.
Well, and are the returns enough that they kind of play into the equation a little bit here?
So I don't know the answer to that question. Like because we put those adductors on there, it actually comes out pretty strong. I actually turned the eductors in for today's test, so that like they didn't really affect the like the so you wouldn't be fighting against them coming back at it as much. And I think I might actually leave them in because one of the things I saw here is that there could be a little bit more flow in the center, but I can't put a pump there because the overflow box is there. So maybe I'll find a pump that I can put the magnet inside the overflow box, and maybe it's a gyre that goes right underneath the weir a couple inches, or I don't know. Maybe I'll find something else that goes in the back there. We'll see. But let's go back to now 60-40. So now it's 40% in the front and 60 on the back, and presumably it will stop like brakes, and it does, right? You can see immediately that it's fighting a lot harder to come back, and you can see all that turbulence now, and it really just wants to cross the back of the tank. It doesn't want to go to the front because all that water's coming around the long ways on the back, coming all the way across the glass, coming back across, and now because it's stronger, fighting back. Yeah, so a totally different thing. Now let's look at 80-20 here, or 20-80, I should say.
Look at this.
And I think the best shot's actually the next one. Okay, yeah, so you can see.
This is what you were seeing on the backside if you were on the backside originally, but there's hardly a bubble coming, moving forward on that front pane.
It's all going across the back, right? So you can see that we did definitely shift the point of turbulence where the different currents actually meet each other. And I don't know, I'm pretty happy with this. You're really not gonna know for sure until you have corals in here and see how the corals react to it. But just watching the velocity of how fast the bubbles move, I think I've got the type of current and speed that I'm looking for.
Well, Terrence had the idea of putting little flags in different places on the rock to kind of see which way they move and stuff like that.
Get some toothpicks and a little piece of plastic, and you can actually like
coral
see
gum
where it
or
goes.
something.
Yeah, I don't know. That'd be fun to actually try that out. All right, so the next one here is actually, did we already do, no, the 0-100.
0 on the back,
so this is
0 on the front.
Yeah, turn the pumps off in the front, and it's just 100% in the back. And this is actually pretty cool because you can see it now traveling back.
Look at how fast that comes
You can
across.
see that current going around and around the tank. And I'm going to let this play again because it's pretty cool to be able to see it, just travel all the way around. Those little bubbles is cool. I used an air pump here, by the way, and you can just blow a tube right into it.
Oh yeah, this is an easy one to do at home. When we first were playing with this last week, we just grabbed some RODI tubing, stuck it down towards underneath the pump, and blew on it, watched where the bubbles went. It's pretty cool.
One thing to note here, though, when you do that is when you blow the air in, you will definitely reduce the amount of water it pushes. So I find doing little pulses actually gives you a more accurate depiction than just leaving the tube in there. Because if you leave the tube in, the flow actually decreases. So little pulses of air seems to do it better, like a couple seconds.
Yeah.
All right, but you can see that water traveling all the way around. I think largely worked. You can see, I'm gonna watch this one more time just because it's cool. I'm really happy with the current and gyre, and also knowing that it shifts around. So here's the big question then.
Yeah.
All right, so that's great in if I was just watching it go back and forth in a rectangular tank here.
Right.
But I actually really want to know, will it go back down the center? If I turn on both, will the flow go down the center, because the center doesn't have any flow at the moment?
No, you would think so. Like the pumps are placed almost identically on either side of the tank. So you know, logically you'd think 100% and 100%. It's all going to travel down the edge. It's all going to go like this, hit dead center, and the only way to come back is the path of least resistance, which should be down the center.
So one of the best ways for this one, because there's so much turbulence in this case, is actually probably drop some food in or watch the sand or whatever. The bubbles, you gotta remember the bubbles always want to float up, right? And so a little bit longer, but I did the bubbles here, and I'm actually pretty happy with how it turned out. So you can see now both of these turned on, and if you look closely, you can see exactly.
No, this was the last one.
There
we go. 100%. This is down the center. So you can see the sand is going down the center like you had hoped for.
So I just did air on one side. I would like to redo this and do air on two sides maybe in the future. But yeah, you can see that the bubbles are wrapping around the front of it and going down the center. Now, not at the same velocity as they were with going across the sides, but I think I'm going to have SPS corals on the outside, and I'll probably use those little caves where there's lighter or darker areas for some LPS corals that don't want that level of flow.
That's a great spot for
them. And so again, if you watch the sand, it's kind of like you really can see where everything is going.
It comes around that corner and starts heading down to the center.
In fact, you see those little pockets of sand that are on the bottom there? Yeah. That is where all the little bits of sand and rubble that fell off the rock landed. It collects only there.
Each one of these different flow
experiments. It's been running for weeks, so like that's where it lands. Everything else stays clean.
I mean, that's not bad, because when you think about it, if you're going to have your LPS there, not huge branching SPS colonies, this is easy to get to for maintenance.
Yeah, for sure. So you can see it a little bit long ways too as well. So again, really looking for all that turbulence and where it hits. And again, if you see that right end, you're like, oh, there's no flow down there. No, it's because the flow is actually fighting back, keeping the bubbles out. Yeah. So I left the pump on a little longer this time, even though it slows down the flow a little bit, just so you can start to see more of the bubbles and where they start to interact. And now you can see there's turbulence all over the whole tank, right? And I'm not going to say, if you didn't care about pumps or wires and pumps and all the visual things of a very visual thing, you could do better if you put pumps on the other side. I'm going to openly admit that.
Yeah,
right?
I agree.
And because of that, maybe the gyre and maybe the little tunes on a sea swirl or something is an option down the road. We'll see. But I think we're going to see we'll all watch together the health of the corals and see how the fish do in the different environments. And I might measure it a little bit more in a couple of different ways. But
so initially then, if our goal was go down one side and then come back across the other and then both on down the middle, did you think this does it? I think it does it.
I do.
I think it does it pretty well.
Yeah, and so one of those things is too, it's like there's a right tool for the right job for everything. So like most people I know that run Vortex run that like reef crest thing, right?
Yeah,
and
just
it's
random,
kind of like randomly
all over the place,
right? All right, so for me, I actually generally like to create sustained currents. You know, not super long ones, but just sustained currents that actually flush the surface of the coral. You tend to get more velocity that way. And so you've heard me talk in the past, like with AC pumps, it's not turn them on and off every 15 seconds because you don't actually get a current going in the tank. It's just like little pulses of water. If you turn this one on for 15 minutes, you'll get a current going in the tank. Then you turn it off, turn this one on for 15 minutes, and you get a current going the other way. Then you turn both of them on, and then you get turbulent flow, and then you just kind of shift back and forth 15 minutes throughout the day. I find that is, I don't know. I mean, who knows? Like, we all like our own flow.
I've always been a reef crest guy from the beginning, and nonstop. And I mean, it works. It's worked for me. Well, so in the little 60-gallon tank in my office, it's all reef crest. It's just random all over the place, chaotic. But there's not much travel space in there to make currents. So
I'm pretty certain I picked up this concept of the sustained currents from. I know David Greger in the Reef Club talked to me about it I don't know, it must have been almost 15 years ago. But I think I also picked it up at one of the Magnus seminars that I sat through, where they're talking about those little pulses don't create a current in the tank, and that you want a sustained current because that is actually what's going to flush the gases and create the gas exchange and allow all like get through that boundary layer on the coral and allow all the minerals in and the hydrogen and stuff out.
Makes sense. Like, who knows how long it takes to like flush away some of those, some of those waste materials and stuff around that coral. But if I'm only getting this every once in a while versus full leaning for 15 minutes, full the other way for 15 minutes, I feel like that makes sense then.
I often have epiphanies too when I'm watching, like I'm in like snorkeling and whatnot, right? Yeah. And so I'll go to a reef area, and generally what happens is like the waves bring all the water in, and if you pay attention, you can kind of see all the corals kind of like doing this. Yeah. Right? And then if you pay attention, eventually there's so much water up on the shore that it has to go back out. Yeah. Right? Yeah. And that's like kind of creates those like rip currents and stuff too. But all of a sudden now it's like going back out, right? And then you see the corals going over this way. And then, but there's a point at which those two things are fighting each other, and that point of turbulence, the weight actually shifts throughout the reef as well. So that doesn't happen on every reef, but like I'm watching it like, I can see why that would work. I don't know. So this is what I'm going to do. So I'm going to use their Tidal swell here program, which basically does what we were talking about. If you can see in the beginning there, it'll be 80% to 20%, then 40-20, or I mean 60-40, then 40-60, then 20-80, and then all of them on all together to flush down the center, rinse and repeat. Yeah.
So basically this one, the graph we're looking at, if you get rid of the blue one, because that's made for, that's kind of for a rectangle tank with pumps on the back. It's these two orange and clear ones that we're looking at, and you can see that one little spot at the end, full power.
Yep.
All equal time.
So that's a tidal swell. And so that's just what I'm going to use. I think it's going to create those gyres I want, and it's going to create the shifting turbulence I want. And then when they're both on, it's going to flush out the center, and it's going to do exactly what I'm looking for. All right. So
if bubbles were the only way we could test in here, because we didn't want to test with beads or dye or... We did run this machine in your thing. I don't know if we learned a whole heck of a lot from it, though.
Yeah, well, so here's this thing about this machine. So, like, this is what I think we're going to shift the conversation now. Like, we're going to start. We're probably a month or so away, or maybe 6 weeks away from starting the new Powerhead Investigates and Flow, because we really want to make sure that we're like, I want to do a bunch of the tests, learn from it, and like make sure that what we're doing here is giving you guys what you want. Yeah. Right? All right. So one of the things that drives me nuts is when you look at a pump online, it says 1,500 gallons an hour, it says 2,000 gallons an hour. Like, does it really? There's people debate that stuff like all the time.
Yeah. I don't even know if what gallons per hour I need. I mean, we've made some pretty good. We've jumped to some pretty good conclusions. From everybody using the pumps. It's kind of like the industry has developed this like scale for how to measure a pump. I don't even know if it applies to what we're trying to achieve here. But then, as that information shared, like I got a 6-foot tank. I run 2 or 3 4,000 gallon per hour pumps. So these pumps are made for like a 6-foot tank, and we've kind of come to an understanding we can size them a little better that way. But
so when I started, it was 10x turnover was the answer, and that's largely because when I started, only thing was really available was maxi jets, right? And then there was Toonses, but the Toonses were like $400, and like I don't know, it was just like. It wasn't the same thing as the world we live in today with high doors and stuff that are $50. Yeah. All right. So, but then they got more affordable, and all of a sudden everybody started to see the benefits of 20x, 30x, 40x, 50x, 100x. And we all made up all these rules of X. Yeah. X's are garbage. Like, I mean, I guess you could use it to some degree, but then when we're talking over at Josh at Worldwide, like he's like the X's are garbage. And like, yeah, I know, but people really want we need all a number. Guidance. Yeah. Like I can't just tell you everything's garbage and leave you to your own. Like, that's not helpful either. Yeah. Right?
We need a number.
So what he's talking about is making sure you have flow, in the areas that you need it, right? So like in this case, I was testing to make sure it would go down the center and it would come in from the sides. And you can see it with those air bubbles. So you can actually see where the water is going and at the speed at which it's going.
Well, and that's kind of like the whole reasoning, or some of the reasoning behind building that NSA aquascape for your tank is so you could do things like that. As we've talked about in all of our our aquascaping mistakes videos and things like that, the rock wall, the whole thing, it just doesn't serve the purpose. You're not getting flow where you need to. But if you open that space up, maybe you can use less pumps, and achieve the same result versus having a big rock wall of aquascape and needing more pumps to add flow to those areas.
So that's actually a great point. But specifically, when they're asking me, what did you want this aquascape to look like and what are its needs, is I want to use pumps on the back, so there has to be a way to return flow down the center, right? And so you create that when you have that kind of specific goal. All right, so here's the thing, is you might stick your hand in one pump or one tank and feel 1,000 gallons an hour and say, how come this one feels so much different than that one?
Yeah, true.
Right? And this one must be weaker. And I'll tell you right now, like the CJ pumps, to me, you put your hand in there and those little tiny guys, I can't remember what they're called, but the CJ
Extremes.
Extremes. Versus, like a Tunes that has a little cone on it. Okay, so both the 1,000 gallons an hour. However, the Tunes pumps that have a little cone on the outside are shooting out high velocity in a 1-inch cone that just barely starts to get bigger as time goes, or distance goes out.
Yep.
Whereas the CJ pumps are like super wide angle. So 1,000 gallons an hour in a flow pattern this big feels a lot less than one at this. And so it's not that one is better than the other. Right tool, right job, used the correct way. Right? So if I want SPS and I want to create turbulence and I want to, all that stuff, high velocity pumps is probably, or lots of low velocity pumps, I guess, but most of the time it's going to be high velocity pumps that create a thin jet of water that travels all the way across the tank, meets another one, creates a point of turbulence. However, if I got an LPS tank or any mixed tanks where I know where I want the flow, all of a sudden that wide flow pattern is a lot more attractive because it's not just like blowing my euphilia like crazy, right? I'm getting that flow, it's flushing and it's doing all the things that we needed to do, but in the pattern that I wanted.
Well, in the same breath too, ultimately knowing what your goal is, like the LPS mixed tank or SPS, and knowing what pumps will get you there to achieve it. Like you said, I could either buy a whole bunch of wide angle pumps to do the same thing that a few low velocity ones, and now you're just making smarter decisions. You end up saving yourself money too, because if the wide angle pump's not going to do it for my SPS, why would I spend money on 4 more of them to get the job done when I can just get 2 different ones, right tool, and achieve the same result?
So where this came from to me is like a new evolution. Let's get rid of the old school gallons per hour thing. You can use that if you want, but I think there's an evolution that we can find. And where I got that actually, this kind of evolved in the back of my head for a while, is one of Dana Riddle's MACNA seminars from a while ago. I think it was turbocharged growth with light flow and some or another. And so when you watch that one, you'll see there's actually guidance in there of linear flow at a certain feet per second. And that is so much more helpful than mysterious 100x turnover.
That's true.
These corals actually need this, and so you can get a fancy tool, and that's what this guy does. So this fancy tool here will give you, works on magnetivity, so it won't work in DI water, but it'll work great in an aquarium. And so water that's flowing past it, it'll tell you in feet per second. So it won't work that super great in a turbulent environment like my aquarium.
Some's coming this way, some's coming back this way.
Yeah, where it's going, it doesn't really know how to read it when it's going all crazy, right? It knows how to put it in a stream and it'll work really great. But if we put it in a 6-foot tank and put it out there a foot out, we'll be able to get the feet per second and the water will probably return way outside of its ranges. All right. So we'll be able to give you feet per second rather than just like some mysterious gallons per hour, right?
Yeah, well, I was thinking about that too. Is if you think like a really fast pump, we put this right in front of one of your MP60s on 100%, and we were seeing like, for me, it doesn't register until I have like a higher number. So like 2 feet per second in my brain goes, that's really low. Like that doesn't seem like a whole lot. But then you think, well, your tank is 5 feet. It's going 2 feet per second. That's really fast.
Yeah,
so,
2 seconds across the whole thing.
to go to the whole thing.
Yeah. So yeah, if you think about it, like though, one of the things is you got this fancy tool here, right? Mm-hmm. But really, man, what you can do is do what I did with those bubbles. Use your phone, film it, and just count how many seconds it takes for it to cross your tank.
Yeah,
right?
That's true.
And so that's the beauty of this, is usually like getting feet per second and information like this is useless if you don't have a tool to measure it at home. But if you have a phone, you have the tool, right? And a piece of RO tubing and some lungs.
Well, and then that can also help answer, doing the bubble one can also help answer the other part of that testing that we're going to do. So we're going to test, the velocity of the pump and the flow, but it's that pattern that you're getting. If you don't know what pattern you have, super wide, super narrow, or somewhere in between, the bubbles can kind of help watch it and get you there.
Yeah, you can see the pattern. Before we move on to the pattern thing though, I want to share, like, I used to actually measure flow out of the power heads too. Right? And so, I don't know, for those of you who followed super long, man, I used to build MJ mods, and we build these like little kits that you put a radio controlled boat and some plumbing fittings on the maxi jet and turned it into tunes essentially.
Yeah.
But we tried all kinds of different boat props and different plumbing fittings, and I always want to know the gallons per hour, right?
Yeah.
And so the easiest way we found to get gallons per hour was actually to just take a garbage bag and put it on the output of the pump, turn it on, let it run for a minute, and then measure how many gallons of water are in the garbage bag. And we do this in a big, like, giant, like, whirlpool. So it's like there's no back pressure to the bag or anything.
Yeah.
And largely it was pretty accurate. Even we tested some of the other pumps out there in the market, like the Tuneses and stuff, and it actually did pretty close to what it said.
It was
confidence building. So, but you wouldn't know. Because again, some of them, like, even if you look at the Tuneses, some of them have really short barrels. The short barrels do wide patterns. Long barrels do focus patterns. So here's the thing: you can go out there and test gallons, but now that I'm thinking about it, do I really want to know this like 1,500 gallons an hour, or do I want to know velocity and feet per second? And I don't have to muck around in the hot tub with a garbage bag. I can actually just blow some air into the tank or into the pump and film it with my phone and watch how many seconds it takes, and I can start to make shifts and understand a little bit better the flow of my tank.
Yeah.
Right. Exactly. So this is what I think we're going to do with this thing. So I think we're going to try to do like 3 or so tests on like all the major power heads out there. It might end up being more. We'll see. We'll test them and we'll see how it evolves. But one of the things I'd like to do is get like a 6 foot long tank. Stick the sensor in here. Like 6 inches out from the pump. Get a velocity reading of the 2 or 3 feet per second or whatever it is. Move it out 6 inches, and there'll be a point where it doesn't work anymore because of the turbulence.
Water,
right? But like at least a foot or 2 feet out, I know what the velocity is coming out of this pump, right? And it's maybe possible we'll be able to like do a 9-point grid so you can kind of see the velocity. It'll depend on the size of the
water,
tank. Okay, but now we'll get an idea of not just a 1,500 gallon an hour pump, but this is the velocity that it comes out at.
Well, yeah, right? So I got a 36-inch tank, a 4-foot tank, a 6-foot tank, a 9-foot tank. I can go and look at these tests and be like, oh, well, I think I kind of need a velocity in that 2 to 3 range or what have you, because that's going to travel the whole distance of my tank, and it's going to hit the other pump on the other side doing the same thing. So now I can choose between 0.5. 0.05 if I don't need that much, or 2.
All right. So the next thing we're going to do is now use that information to understand the angle of the pump exit, right?
Yeah.
And so I want to know, I mean, I can, at this point for me, I can usually just like visually look at it and know whether or not it's going to be wide just by looking at the design.
Build, yeah. And then
But sometimes they catch me off guard. Like I know for sure the design of the Seche one's going to be wide. But the design of that visually isn't that much different than a Vortec. And the Vortec, to me, looks like the design would end up being wide, but it's actually more higher velocity than you think.
Interesting.
All right, just because there's no like cone on the end of it or anything.
Yeah.
But the propeller design and everything just changes how it works. So you can't just guess. Let's give you the actual information. Like so, when you're looking for a pump and you want to know what it does, here this will tell you.
Oh, the easiest way to show that.
I think we're going to put some dye
in.
So we're going to, I think some of you probably saw this on, I think we did it on like the carbon testing one, But we're going to inject dye right into the pump and probably use like slow-mo or whatever on the camera, and you'll see it poof out. And you'll be able to then draw lines of the exact angle of exit on the pump. So you'll know, man, is this a 30 degree, 60 degree, 90 degree, whatever it is, so that you can make an informed decision, right tool, right job, use it the right way, right? I would value that for sure.
Yeah, well, like you said, well, not only can you not sometimes tell what the angle is going to be, but there's also some folks out there that are building different impeller, propeller type covers that you can actually change it to what you want it to be. So if my pump is wide angle, I love the pump, I love everything about it, or I need the pump, or it just fits for me, but I need like a narrow angle, I can now like find some way to adapt it to what I need.
Yeah, so Need Aquatics and like a bunch of other guys are out there making those things that snap on your Vortex.
Yeah.
So you can remove the fish guard from your Vortex. And I've seen them change it to all kinds of different sizes. One of the things I thought that somebody should make is a little scoop on the end. I don't know if this would work or not, but if you made a little scoop on the end, could you take a Vortex and now aim it?
Oh, I see what you're saying.
Right? I don't know if that would work for sure or not, but that'd be pretty cool if one of the things about a Vortex is it kind of
stays one side,
right? In fact, I actually think, at some point it would make sense for the Ecotech people to have their own like swappable options for the front. So hopefully that will happen someday too. All right, so here's the thing. If I asked 80% of the people out there, what's the exit angle of your pump?
I have no idea.
What are you talking about? That's the evolution here.
Yeah.
So gallons per hour, great, we know that. It's on there, you can talk about it, do whatever you want with it. But what's the velocity of your pump? Well, I don't know. I don't know. Well, what do you mean? What are you even talking about? No, we're gonna give you that information. Then we're gonna give you the trajectory information. Then, so some of you watched us build the NSA Escape for a 120 gallon tank.
Yeah.
Right?
We're going to use it.
We're going to use it. And so what I built that thing specifically for, other than just trying to learn more about building aquascapes and sharing that information with you guys, is I built it specifically for this. And so what we're going to do is, if you saw our flow dynamics videos from the past, you've seen those little teeny green and yellow beads. And if you haven't seen it, go search for flow dynamics BRS.
No neutrally buoyant beads.
Yeah, so
now we get to watch them.
You can watch the flow now. You don't have to worry about the air that wants to rise or whatever. You can actually watch these beads and how they actually interact with the tank. And so what we'll be able to do now is use the pump. Let's say we're checking out those little Seche Voyagers, or I should say Extremes, or the Toonses, or the Vortex, or the core, the Wave, any of these pumps. And we're looking at them, and the Gyre I think is the most fun to watch. Actually. But if you want to do all of those things, we can actually see how it works with an aquascape in there. And the benefits actually of an NSA aquascape, where you can see the flow actually going through the aquascape instead of being blunted at the back when it's mounted up in the back.
Yeah.
And
we'll also be able to test the exactly what you were trying to achieve in the 360 that we saw today. Does changing these pumps, or how do you change these pumps to change that point of turbulence in a long tank like that? You can watch that with the beads. You can also identify, is 2 wide angles on either end versus 2 narrow angles with high velocity. What kind of dead spots do they create if they're both at 100% constant? So, or you're 100%. And now you can see a wide angle actually has maybe less dead spots than like 2 very focused angles.
Or like, placement, right?
Yeah.
So a lot of us put them on the end, you know, and like Terrence is always telling me, like, no, I don't put it on the back. I put them on the back and then angle them out. You know, and I don't see the cords, I don't see the magnets on the beautiful ends. You know, like the ends actually often are like one of the coolest shots. And like, I don't want those cords and stuff in there, so you can angle them in. So, and like obviously, I appreciate that with the vortex in my case, you know. So yeah, so what we're gonna do is like. Is it 2 pumps? Is it 4 pumps? Depending on the size or velocity of these things to create what we're looking for. But you can actually watch it and decide for yourself, you know, how these things are interacting with your tank. And now, man, like I think maybe for the first time, like an informed decision on your what pump. Power head. Like, because right now it's like you go to the forum or you go to the group and they're like, hey man, what pump should I get? And 90% of the answers will be whatever one that I bought.
Whatever, yeah, exactly. It's like I run 4 MP40s, I run Tunes, I run Jabos, I run this. We're like, yeah, well, they probably work for a lot of different reasons.
Well, the thing is like I would tell you right now, like, oh yeah, I go buy Vortex, but because that was the right solution for me, right? The answer is actually when you say which ones, my answer should be, well, what are you trying to achieve? Right? And then there's a solution, man. They're different.
It was the same thing with the lighting. You know, how would you know which light to choose other than like brand and, you know, height and form? But now you know, like, if, you know, the mounting height and what I need for mounting height, what do I need for spread, what do I need for, you know, spectrum and things like that, I can make a smarter decision.
So I got high hopes for this one. I really, really have high hopes that we're going to evolve the conversation. And like when we started this whole lighting thing, I tried to be brave. Like if anybody asked what power you needed, almost nobody would tell you the answer. Right? It was super hard to get a definitive answer. And like, guys, we need to go do all the research. Let's go test all our tanks. Let's talk to all the people that we trust and come up with a range. Right? So SPS 200 to 350. Right? And like come up with a range because it's valuable. You have to have some. You can't emulate nothing. You know, like if somebody asks a question, man, you have to be able to give an answer that is valuable. And there are some corals will probably do SPS corals will do a little bit less, better less, and a little bit, you know, like thrive in an environment with a little bit more light. But like there's an answer where 80-20 did. If you do this, you will almost certainly have success. So let's do the same thing with flow. If you talk to a lot of people, like they will tell you flow is more important than light, and lighting is now actually like one of the easiest things to get right. Now that the information's out there, we can just tune our lights. So like I watched one of your investigates. You've already gave me the tools. Like I just set it up the way you did.
Josh is one. Josh from WWC is one that says that. Like, who cares about lighting? Flow is where it is at for him. So
yeah, you get the power right, you're done. So with flow though, like people just don't know. Like you just don't really think about it, but flow is how the coral gets rid of all of those oxidants as the byproduct of photosynthesis. The more light you have, the more byproducts of photosynthesis, more oxidants. If you don't get those things out, it will poison the coral, it will bleach, and let go of all of its zooxanthellae, right? And if you put it right on the edge, then even just like it will tolerate that, but heat comes in or some other issue, and then it does the same thing. Right, so it's also, if you watched that video the other day about hydrogen and pH and like, it's the way that it gets rid of all of those things and it raises the internal pH of the coral itself, right? It's also how all of the elements get from the water into the coral. And if you do it super low flow, there's actually a boundary layer that's like right around the edge of the coral where the water doesn't actually penetrate. It actually has to hit it with velocity to be able to interact with the surface of the coral itself.
Well, that's a good one to point to at the when we're done today. Is that if you haven't seen that hydrogen oxygen video, we'll have to point to that. But
okay, so for those of you who don't know, that one took me 2 months.
What's up?
Every weekend, I write a lot of those scripts at like 7 a.m. till about 11 a.m. on Saturdays and Sundays. While I watch my kids, I kind of babysit my kids and do this. I know it's 7 days a week here, but I kept trying to figure out how to tell that story and how to like really understand the hydrogen ion, pH, and it really just actually started with trying to describe, you know, all the elements in water. I'm like, well, I might as well start with the, you know, H2O. You know, like, this will be a paragraph.
Yeah,
right? It's just hydrogen, oxygen.
96% of the entire thing.
It is H2O, just that, but the excess hydrogen ions in the tank actually has this fundamental role. And if you watch this thing, there's one takeaway that I wish I could have nailed even better, right?
Yeah.
Is that a pH there isn't a benefit of going from 7.8 to 8.3. It's actually a detractant for going from 8.3 to 7.8. And every single biologist I've ever met, every article I've ever read will tell you that going as much as 1/10 of a pH lower in the ocean stresses out the corals, and not just a coral could die, but an entire reef can get stressed when heat or anything else comes. And in our tanks, we're saying, well, I've been running 7.8 to 8.3, I let it go up and down, and it seems okay. But at the same time, stuff dies now and then. I don't really know why. I think we're honing in on why. Not necessarily this, but there's a whole array of things, right?
Yep.
But if we've come to the conclusion that every researcher has come out to the same conclusion that lower pH actually dissolves the skeleton, makes it harder to build its own skeleton, well, of course. Why are we ignoring this in our tanks, right? And so that was the big takeaway for me is if you run it low, expect problems. If you run it higher, well, you know what? Now you're running at the ocean level, and you're probably going to have the success that is attached to that. I would go ahead and watch the whole thing, because actually it was one of my favorites to produce. Took 2 months to do. Poor Dave over there had to edit all those animations. I know, super fun. But yeah, all that's created just by flow, getting to the surface, and creating an opportunity to get rid of all those hydrogen ions and back into the water, raise the pH up, and start building a skeletal structure.
Yeah, for sure. Got some questions on flow here.
All right, sweet.
If you want to take some?
All right, sure.
This Hands of Stone one right here at the top on the left says, just to make it clear, is going, he wants to know when is this going to take place. So is it going to take 6 weeks to get footage of someone pouring a colored liquid into a power head? So kind of like that sense of urgency. How come you guys can't do this right now? And we are still putting the test together on exactly what it looks like, what pumps, what placement. There's a lot of thought, that process that goes into it. So it's not like tomorrow we can just go dump some liquid in there and then give you guys a 20-minute video on what happened.
Okay, well, so there's behind the scenes too. Right?
Yeah.
Well, we're doing somewhere between 5 and 7 videos a week also, not just this one. But beyond that, so one of the questions is, all right, so we're going to dump dye into this tank, right? Well, I don't want to have to clean out the tank every time, because often the shot doesn't come out right, and then you have to redo it again. Right?
Takes a lot of time to set up.
And so we're well, what's the right dye? The that visually gives us what you want. So we got to test a bunch of different approaches to dye, and we're considering some dyes that may change color based on electricity or pH or whatnot, so we can get it back and repeat. We're also, discussed methylene blue, so that you just use carbon to take it out in the next 20 minutes.
If we're doing this in a 120 gallon and 180 gallon tank, 6 foot and 4 foot tank, that's a lot of time and water to swap out every time if we had to do a water change on it. Poor Brent.
Take forever. So here's the thing: is it might seem we're just dumping some dye in there, but also I want to make sure that what we're doing is valuable. That we're not just last time I did this was the pump dynamics thing, and I'm well, I'm not really going to comment on what I think about this. I'm just going to show you. And you can go look at tons of different pumps that we tested, and you can go see the pattern. You can see, if you wanted, in this case, actually clock the velocity if you wanted to.
What are you going to do with it?
Yeah, but it was totally missing the okay, well, there's the data, what do I do?
Yeah.
And so that's part of it also, is we're developing along with it, how do I use this information to achieve a specific or desired result? You know, I don't want to just know stuff to know stuff. So, some people will be able to interpret that themselves, but I think a lot of people are okay, there's the information, what do I do with it?
Yeah, very true. Yep.
So, I don't know. There you go.
It's going to take some time to get it right. On that note too, there's a lot of things that we've started or attempted before that we just threw out the window.
Oh yeah,
just because it just didn't come out right.
Yeah, and I don't want to do this 400 times. There's got to be a better way. Also, I have to order a 120-gallon rimless tank to be able to get some of this stuff to work. So there's some tanks to get equipment we need to order. It actually took a while for this thing to come.
I like Brendan's reef question here. He says, so how do you correlate velocity to corals' needs?
All right, so I don't remember the exact numbers, and I'm going to do some research along the way, but there's actually data out there on what the velocity is in healthy reefs and the currents. And most of the time in a lot of reefs, it isn't like just constant like reef crest, like just constant turbulence, right?
It is.
Water's flowing in,
way.
water's flowing out, you know, just kind of based on different things. And there's points of turbulence, but there's actual data out there on what it is in the ocean. I think that turbocharged photosynthesis by Mr. Riddle out there, it has actual a velocity recommendation in there, or when you get through that boundary later. So we'll share all that information. I'd go check, if you were interested in this at all, I would go check out that video immediately.
Yeah.
So that would be your next step.
Variant says, are we just testing?
We'll give you a link to this at the end.
That's very good.
That'll be the one we point to.
Is this just testing vortex? Is what Variant wants to know.
No. In
every single pump.
In our case, yeah, it was, I guess.
For today's
just
test?
for today on my tank, because I had vortex on there.
That's what you wanted.
Yeah, I'm testing my install, right? Yep. But it is not. What we're going to try to find out is the high doors of the world, the Tunses, the gyres, the ice caps. I want to know about all of them, not just one of them, but how they combine with each other, you know, and maybe even let's mix different brands together even to achieve a desired result. I don't know, but no, man, we're going to go through all of it. And so for me, the big thing here is it's not good enough to just have pumps like here for sale, and if you buy one, we'll ship it, and hopefully it'll come fast. Not good enough. I want to actually show you how to use it to a desired result. So I don't know, I'd like to get as close as you can to that in-store experience.
Yeah.
When I walk in, tell me what kind of pump I need.
Yeah.
Right?
Point me to the right one.
I want to be able to give you the information that so you're looking for a wide-angle pump. This is what a wide-angle pump looks like. You can see it in the die. This is the velocity.
Here's
this
all
is what
the
I do
best
with it,
ones.
right? So I don't know. Hopefully it will look like that with any pump. So if you pick one up from us, you'll know what it does beforehand. Hopefully use it to a better result and be happy with it.
Neil's Reef Aquarium asks, is your tank nearly cycled yet?
You know what? I wish I had the photo of this actually. So I'm waiting on fish. I think that the tank is cycled at this point. It's been up for a while.
Yeah.
You know, it's been cycling water for over a month now. And there was gonna have fish in it, and so I made I don't know if it's a mistake. I don't know. It's tragic is what it is. So Elliot was quarantining my 2 lightning clowns, and he didn't want to give me little teeny guys, so he got me bigger ones.
Yeah.
And I've never put lightning maroon clowns in a tank before because they're super mean. I didn't want to get bit, and I don't want them killing all the other fish in the tank, you know.
Super territorial.
Yeah, and I'm like, it's 360 gallon. Here's my chance. It's like one of those fish that I just always have been really excited about and never been able or just wanted to or put in a tank that had other fish in it. The female decided to get pissed off one night, killed the male and 3 other fish.
Jeez.
Yeah, and then as soon as he told me, I'm like, oh man.
Probably should put that in yours.
There's probably 50 people out right now saying, I told you so. Right? Because they did. They told me so.
That was going to be the first
Facebook.
one that you put in there too, right?
Yeah, it was my first pair.
Even more territorial when you add other ones in.
I know, it's so sad. So here's the thing, man. I guess I really thought in a 360 I would have been okay. That they would give enough room for them to disperse. They'd chase each other, but they got places to go, especially in that NSA type aquascape. You know, they can escape pretty easy. I don't know, but I'm not going to find out because there's going to be some pretty nice fish that go into this tank, and I don't want her killing them. So she's somebody else's problem now. So they're getting the fish, and they're also building the lighting hood at the moment. I received
from Chris.
the Kessels today. The Reef Brights are on their way. Actually, I got the shipping notice on that.
Nice.
And Chris told me they're machining out the parts for the hood this morning.
Nice.
Yeah. So things are coming together. There'll be a hood and there'll be fish in there soon. Hopefully. Also, I think they just picked up all of those. If you've been watching my Facebook, you see all those super cool controller boards. So,
oh, yeah, Kyle's stuff.
Yeah, so there's a controller board for the Apex, big old monitor on it. There is a Ecotech board. There's a dosing board. There's going to be a whole Brightwell apparatus. There's all kinds of stuff. So all that stuff, I think, shipped if it didn't get picked up today, it's going to get picked up tomorrow.
Yep.
I saw a little, getting stuff up from Canada here.
All backlit, right, nice and colorful. It's awesome.
Yeah,
awesome
I can't wait to show you guys. So I don't know. Yeah, things are still kind of, I think the nature of it is just like your tank. There's ebbs and flows.
Yep.
Right. So I don't know. But the pumps are in today. So, you know what? I think maybe next week. Is there more flow questions or?
There's just a couple here we can hit real quick. Ben asked, "Can you reverse the impeller direction on the vortex And no, you can't.
No, then we'd come out the sides. Hey, by the way, before we move on from this one,
yep.
I wish I had a photo of it, but when you put those vortex on the bottom, here's a quick lesson: use the little guards on the outside. Because it will suck in little rocks in there in a way that it doesn't if it's on the surface. Yep, so they give you those little foam guards on it. Make sure to use them because otherwise you'll suck in little rocks and it'll get jammed.
Yep,
so
that happened to us. Yep. Ross Reef, what are your thoughts on changing the depth or placements on each side by an inch or two so that the flow isn't on the same horizontal line, instead mirroring a pump placement like the 160 behind you?
Yeah, I mean, you can. I don't think because, in this case, where I placed them is A, where there wasn't plumbing on the back. Mm-hmm. Yeah, but B, very limited. Yeah. I was trying to aim it up so that they aren't blasting anything directly.
Yeah, because some of those edges of this aquascape where you expect a coral to live is right in the path of that MP4 or MP60.
Again, you have to look at your aquascape and decide, because this is a good question, because you actually do this differently than I do a lot. I tend to aim them right at each other. So I put them on the same horizontal line and they hit each other, and then I try to, and then what they had is if they're on 100, then they hit in the middle and that's where the turbulence is, right? And often you'll see that in your aquarium because all the sand blows away, right? So what I like to do is trying to find a way then to make this one go 60 and this one go 40, and then the turbulence shifts over here, then 70-30 shifts over here, and you can see that the point of turbulence shift back and forth in the tank. What happens?
This will be interesting to test. Is if they're on the same horizontal line, depending on their angle, does that hit exactly in the middle and do that? Or if I put one on top and one on the bottom, does it change that point at all? Depend on the angle and the velocity and things like that. It'll be exactly the questions that we seek to answer in those tests.
There's unexpected results.
Oh, always.
For sure.
It's exciting.
But if you put them on a not even with each other, what will happen is they'll just go under each other.
You think?
Well, I think. Yes.
Yeah.
But here's the thing. If it's super high velocity, you'll probably go under each other. But if they're big old cones, they probably won't.
Yeah.
And you might be able to create
just a wall coming at a wall, and it doesn't matter really, in this 20-some inches, is one wall going to be higher than the other,
Actually, I just got out of this. For me, man, I have things that I firmly believe, but you're right, I might be totally wrong. So we'll get data from that.
Yep.
We'll be able to share it. You'll be able to see it, and the most important thing for me is when people ask you or ask me or you questions, that when we give the answer, it's based on as much data as humanly possible, and it's accurate because it actually helps that person instead of whatever you just happen to believe.
Yeah, you know? Oh, I think it does this, and there you go. There's your answer.
I can tell you so many things in the last few years that I really thought I believed, and it just turned out,
completely upside down.
Yeah, well, I've been told that the things that the community has decided that is true sometimes just isn't.
That's true.
That's true. So a lot of what we do in reefing is based on plausible theory.
Tons
right?
of it.
Yeah,
almost everything.
Yeah, I don't know. That sounds like
point.
That could be true.
Yeah.
And then if enough people nod their heads, all of a sudden it's fact.
Yeah. I mean, especially when you get down to granular stuff like the bacterial level type things that you can't even see with your eye, but everything almost in that department is plausible.
I could go down this one for a path forever. Anyway, so are there any other ones?
One more, but we can hit real quick. And maybe we'll find an answer for this one in the testing, but basically it's what is the most ideal flow pattern? Not what we can do with our power heads, but just the most ideal pattern for coral.
So
big hairy
I
question.
don't know if a pattern is the right word, but I'm going to tell you that the people that I trust and I look to for mentors will tell you that like actual currents will like benefit the corals more with shifting turbulence within there, because you can't blast in the same way all day, every day, or that's bad too. Not only probably bad for the health, but you're going to get a coral that looks like that. And so I don't know if it's pattern per se, like there's like some magical way you could draw it up there, but you know, to get the coral as much flow as possible without harming its tissue, varying that flow is probably the right answer. But I think we're going to evolve this question. Like, there's no question that a year from now, as we sit here after doing all of these tests and doing all the research that we're going to do and all the millions of conversations will come out of it, that a year from now we won't be like, man, we've evolved the conversation of flow. Like lighting for sure. Lighting for sure. When we entered this conversation, you know, I started like almost 2 years ago.
That's true.
When we started that conversation, it was like more par, more better. I don't know. The Radion brand is great. You know, and that was the community's conversation for the most part. Is like, is brand association, the quality build. I don't know. You know, like, or look at Jerry's tank. He has that. It looks great. Now, like, I know why Jerry's tank looks great with that thing, and how I can emulate it for myself and make changes based on the differences between my tank and their tank.
Interesting.
All right.
So that flow pattern, is there a right one? I don't know, but that leads to Dana's talk.
I think maybe we're going to do a calcium alkalinity next week. Maybe.
For your tank?
For my tank, yeah. But I'm going to leave you right here, so there'll be a little link up here. You can check it out later. This will be the one to, I think it's turbocharged photosynthesis, light, water, and
it's got Dana on the front doing some really awesome, I
don't know. There's another third thing in there. Go watch it, because it will change the way that you think about flow. It'll change the way you think about light. It'll change the way that you think about grown corals. It is absolutely worth watching. See you guys.
See ya.
Do-do-do.
Done.